Hey guys, how's it going? We are going to be working with some beautiful African violets here in the Hartley today. I've got some brand new ones from the garden center that we are going to repot, and then I've got a tray of babies that we propagated. I think I put the leaves in maybe late summer, early fall. I'll have to look that up, but they've created a bunch of beautiful little plants that I would like to get potted up. Look at these. All of these beautiful little plants came from leaves. This is the leaf right here that I put in the container. This is the little plant that came from it. It just amazes me how that works. It takes a little while, but it's 100% worth the wait. And then these are the beauties that I picked up. Look at that, down at my parents' garden center. They recently got a huge load of gorgeous violets in, and I couldn't resist. It's been a while since I've bought any new ones. So we've got the pure white, this fluffy, ruffly purple and white. Oh, this is just classic. I love that. And that's just a profusion of flowers. And then this one wasn't as full, but the bloom is so unique and gorgeous. And then we've got kind of a light periwinkle and this blue. It's almost a blue. I mean, I don't know if that comes through on camera, but this is more blue than purple for sure with that white ruffly margin. And I'm gonna try to arrange them on this little stand. You're gonna have to ignore my shade. That's how we're able to do this right now because it is a bright sunny day. But my mom and I picked this wire or metal plant stand up on one of our antiquing trips, and I think it's perfect. This is the south side of the Hartley, but the north side of the wall. So it gets bright here, but not direct sun, which should be perfect for violets. It's always a little bit of a trial and error thing, trying a new location, and if you see the plants kind of struggling, you can always move them to a different spot. I initially thought about putting them over here, like by the kumquat around the corner, but I wanted them in a little bit more of a visible spot because they're so and gorgeous. And I think that they will get better care being in the Hartley than being in the house. I also considered putting them in there. My poor houseplants in the house. Neglect. As far as supplies go, I've got the African violet potting mix, and you guys, this is a loftier blend of soil. If you were to compare it to the regular potting mix, try not to make a huge mess. I can just, it feels a little spongier, and it's the correct pH for violets. They have a little bit more of a delicate, fragile root system, so they need a lighter, loftier blend of soil in order to flourish. And then we are also going to fertilize. I already mixed a little bit up. So we've got the violet plant food, which you can do a couple different ways. You can fertilize at full strength every 2 to 4 weeks, or you can fertilize at like quarter strength every time you water, and then every once in a while you need to flush out the root system with clean water. I could tend to like to do the every 2 to 4 weeks because that's more attainable for me. Remembering to do it every time, no. So one thing to consider when you're repotting African violets, which you should, if you've got violets, you should take a look at the root system about once a year, see how they're doing. If the plant is like rocking and blooming and looking healthy, I probably wouldn't mess with it. But if it hasn't bloomed for a while, or if you're losing leaves, that sort of thing, then you might consider a repot. Typically don't have to repot it into something very much bigger. I brought out 2 different styles of pots because I wanted to talk through the differences here in terms of the way violets' root systems grow. So you can see here, we've got a tall pot, which this plant would look great in, and we might go ahead and do that because this one's already so much bigger than these other ones, but like in this case, this would not be good because it's way too tall. And African violets' root systems, they aren't deep. They're a very shallow root system. They grow more wide than they do long. So a wider, shorter pot is usually more appropriate. So like this one here, we're bumping up in width, but not very much in height. That's just absolutely perfect right there. And I might see if I can get away with, let's see if this will work. Yeah, I don't know. So gorgeous. I'm gonna try it. So wider than tall pots, and then also the differences in the types of pots. I really like terracotta and concrete. Terracotta, of course, is very porous, which African violets like a lot of oxygen and aeration around their roots, so that makes it perfect, but they do dry out the quickest. So I find that I have to water my African violets quite a lot more than I do in like a traditional African violet pot. You see those glazed ceramic containers that are complete. Like there's a pot on the outside that does not have a drain hole. You put water in that, and then there's like a terracotta insert. So it's a situation like this would be glazed with no drain hole. So you put water in there, and then you actually pot your violet in another pot that sinks down in there. so that the plant's root system can soak in the water it needs from the reservoir below. But I've never really found an African violet pot that I love. So terracotta always seems to be the way I go. You can also keep them in plastic. I've also thought about possibly glazing the inside of a terracotta pot. That would lengthen the amount of time you could go between watering. So you kind of just have to play with it there. I just like to do terracotta and know that I'm going to need to water them a little bit more often. So let's work with our big plants first and get them all repotted and arranged, and then we'll work on the babies. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these root systems look like. You can see little roots coming out the bottom, just a little bit. Also, a couple of things to look for when you are choosing which African violets to buy. I mean, there's the obvious visual, does it look nice? Does it have a shape that you liked? Do the leaves look healthy? Are they, clear or spotted? Have, they've been watered from overhead, which is a no-no for African violets in terms of like getting water on their leaves. And then the other thing you can do is gently lift up the under leaves and look at the center of the plant. And what we're looking for are new leaves being formed. Is there a bunch of little babies in there? Yes, there are in this one. Look inside this one. You may not even need to lift the leaves up. This one's fairly open, but if you look in there, there are little baby leaves and buds for new blooms coming up through the center. And then in here in this one, you can see the baby leaves down in there. Also, I need to comment on the price here. 14 bucks for this huge violet, and these little ones are $6. Isn't that awesome? Okay, first thing we're gonna do, a little bit of soil in here. This is a loftier mix. I don't know if I'm going to be able to form it against the sides very well. We'll see. Kind of prepping this vessel for its new plant. Okay, let's see how this one looks. Looks nice, not root bound in the slightest, but you can see how delicate the roots are. Okay, now we're going to take the container that one is in, and we're going to use it as our guide and pack soil in around the outside and create the perfect size well for the root ball to go down in. I do this with most of the things I repot, but I think it's especially helpful in repotting violets so that you don't have to upset the root system too much. So we pull that out. Look at that. It's a perfect size hole. So we can take our violet and just pop it right in. Look at that. Done. I just kind of tamp my fingers around the base to make sure there's no air pockets. And that violet looks exceptional in that container. Oh, I love it so much. Okay. So I think I'm gonna have to go get a smaller saucer for that one, but oh, so pretty. So we've got 5 more potted ones to repot. Let's get that done. Okay, I'm gonna check out the root system on this one first before we decide on the pot. Oh, it must have just been repotted into that, because look at this. Yep, I can put it in this smaller one, or better yet, this one. Yeah. It's beautiful. And there they are. Aren't they beautiful? I was able to fit 5 on that stand and then a little one right there. And I think I can tuck in maybe 3 small ones that we repot today. But I got to thinking, the sun is still pretty low in the sky at this point of the year. So I'm gonna have to watch it today. As the sun moves this direction, I wanna make sure that sun rays do not come in and hit these plants. They really prefer a bright indirect light sort of situation. They cannot take full sun. That will fry their delicate little leaves. So in the wintertime, they can handle a little bit more brightness. Still probably don't want to put them in direct sun, but you can put them in like a south or a west facing window, kind of set back from the window. And then as the season progresses and it gets warmer, you know, into summertime, you can move them to a north or an east facing window, and they do really well in that sort of situation. And they like the temperatures right around 65 to 75-ish. So it's likely when it gets real hot in here, I'll need to move these inside or into the studio where the temperature remains a little bit more consistent through the heat. But right now it's like perfect situation for these. Let's take a close look at each one of these. They're just so gorgeous. I mean, you put them in beautiful pots and put them up next to a brick wall and they look even better. I think they're just so pretty. Okay, I'm gonna grab my water that has fertilizer in it, which you don't have to fertilize the same day you repot, and some people would say not to because you don't wanna do too much too quickly. But this is how I water my violets. I know a lot of people will water them from underneath, but with this kind of container, it just doesn't work as well for me. So I just make sure to thoroughly water them in. And I'll check the saucers when I'm done. We just don't want to let them sit in any water. So if you are watering from underneath, like filling up the saucers, fill them up, let them sit for 30 minutes, and then pour out the excess water. Don't let them sit in it. They might need a little extra today since the soil is fresh. It's important not to get water on their leaves because it can cause spotting. And if that does happen, let the leaves, like you can kind of like tap the leaves like that, and it kind of taps off the bulk of the water, and then let the leaves dry out before you put them in a bright light sort of situation. And a lot of people will keep violets under grow lights. That's actually the best location to put them. Position the lights about 12 to 14 inches up above the plants. Nice consistent temperature, consistent light, but you want to make sure that they get about 14 or so hours of light and then 10 hours of darkness, because they do need at least 8 hours of dark in order to trigger blooming. So you'll get the best blooming out of your plant if you have it in a spot that gets, 14 hours of light and then 10 hours of dark. And I'm seeing a couple of leaves that have like cracks in them, so I'm going to remove those, and you just kind of gently wiggle them from the base of the plant, and they usually release right away. Everything else, oh, there's one more. Looks like there's water. See, this is what can happen if water drops on the leaves. They get kind of like floppy and discolored. So I just go in and just kind of pop off that leaf at the base. Okay, now we get to work with our baby plants. Also, this is a really good example of what happens when water gets dripped on the leaves and you've got hard water. So these were allowed to dry, but they still make hard water spots. So I just leave them because, eventually I'll be grooming them off at some point, and hopefully the rest of the plant hasn't been subjected to water drips. It'll be much easier to water these once they're in their new homes. Look at these cute little pots. I did bring my tongs out to help with this. So I'm going to gently slide it in around the plant. Pull it out. Don't see much for roots, but I see another baby plant forming at the base. Pull that one out. This is actually a great example to show what happens. So you can see this right here. That was the original leaf we put in the tray. And then these are the babies that have sprouted from it. So this one's really not doing much of anything. There's this one here. I don't know. I'm gonna probably pop that one off and try to maybe reroot that one. But this is the main one that we want to pot today. Put a little soil in here. Make a well, and then we're going to just pop this in. I don't think I made my well deep enough. Hang on. There we go. And you can bury the stem up a little bit, or down, I guess I should say, so it's more stable. Like you don't have to have the roots real close to the surface if they're further down. And there we go. That was a free violet right there. We have done videos about violet propagation, and maybe we can pop one down below. And I can't remember if I filmed it when I did this particular tray or not. But basically, you just fill your tray with your violet mix. You take a healthy leaf off of a plant. You know what? This one actually needs to be groomed off. So let's just pretend that this is a healthy leaf. So you go in and just pop it off like you're grooming the plant, like that. So ignore that there's that little spot. Just pretend it's a nice looking one. And all you do is you stick the leaf down in the soil like that. Keep the soil moist. I usually put a humidity dome over the top for a little while, and then all of a sudden you'll notice like these little babies starting to push out of the soil. It's just amazing. Okay, so let's get the rest of these little ones out and potted. I'm not sure if I'm gonna leave all of them in here. We just gotta find them a nice shady spot so they don't get stressed. And here are all the little babies. I made a little bit of a mess when I was watering. First time watering things in is always a little bit more messy because the soil wants to kind of move around a little bit more until it locks in place a little bit better. Now, I did not separate every single one of these baby violets. Like you can see, this one's a cluster of like 3 or 4 because I knew this is all the little pots I had. So later on, when we repot, we'll have to separate them, but it'll give them more of a chance to form up their own individual root systems. But I think they'll be happy in this spot. I'm just gonna keep them right here under this table because I think they'll be really protected here from any intense light. It's bright, but not intense. So I think that'll be perfect. Except for that one. I did put that little guy right there. That's just the sweetest little spot right here. And here's our empty tray. Project done. And you guys, that is it for today's project. I could not be happier with how this turned out. It looks like spring. African violets just look like spring to me. You know, I think an Easter table, like a dinner table set with a bunch of African violets down the center with bunnies and maybe a few little eggs scattered around would be so, so cute. Maybe I should do that. I would need more for that though. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.